Anytime that works. Good day, ladies and gentlemen. It's 21 minutes now past the top of the hour. This is Insight on Business. My name is Michael Libby. It's all brought to you by FWRSA. FWRSA Tax out of Clive, Iowa. They are working hard on your taxes until the cows come home. FWRSA of Clive. The business of politics. Both of our guests ran for political office in 2012. And sadly, both were not successful in their run. And for pure transparency in this, I assisted both of our company assisted both of these clients, both of these candidates as they ran for office. These are some photographs that were taken during the campaign. I think you'll get a kick out of. Susan Judkins and Desmond Adams. This is one of the many parades that they were taking part in. And this is the public side of what you see during a campaign. You know, I think on that day it was pretty doggone hot. Individuals getting together at house parties and events. Both Desmond and Susan became fast friends during this election, and for pure transparency, I became friends with both of these people as well. And that friendship is carried on. And so these are some of the public things that you would see going on, where people would talk with people, and there would be house parties and parades and speeches and all these kinds of things where individuals would gather together and see the candidate up close and personal and ask questions, coffee shops out in public. This happened to be a shot where Desmond was downtown at Palmer's Deli and was featured on CNN talking about the election cycle just before the caucuses, as a matter of fact, in 2011. I don't know, it's been a long time ago. In studio with us, Desmond Adams, who ran for Iowa State Senate and Senate District 22. Welcome, Desmond.
Thank you, Michael. Good to be here.
Good to have you here. And also Susan Judkins. Susan ran for office in House District 43, and that was Clive and Windsor Heights. Welcome. I'm glad that we could finally make this, Susan. You know, the other day we tried to do this and we had some significant technical issues. So
it's fine. Good to be here.
We're all back in charge. We're going to talk. I don't do politics on this show. I do politics and other things that I get to do, and so this is strictly about business. So I want to talk a little bit about the business side of politics. There are some similarities. And those similarities have to do with, you've got to have a plan, you've got to have a budget, you've got staff, you've got decisions to make, all those kinds of things. Desmond, what was the most surprising thing that paralleled business from and the campaign when you entered into that?
The wider range of customers.
Yeah.
The wide-ranging customer base, and in business. You really have you try to find your defined niche in customers, but in running for office, everyone is your customer that resides in the district. So you have a myriad of different perspectives, ideologies, thought processes, needs, and you somehow have to craft a message and deliver that message in a very succinct manner that can impact the broad spectrum of individuals in a very short period of time.
And Susan, what about you? What surprised you the most when you were going into this? I mean, you've never run for public office before, but you've been involved in the public discourse or the public conversation about all kinds of things at the State House. What surprised you the most?
Well, many people have run campaigns, and so I thought this would be more like a franchise opportunity where you could pick up something off the shelf and kind of copy what others have done to be successful. And the thing that was surprising to me is just how targeted you need to be in paying attention to the needs of your constituents.
And how did you get to that point? How did you find those targeted messages?
I had advice from a number of different sources, both political and otherwise. And then I just learned to really trust my own tuition. The more time I spent interfacing with people who actually lived there and realized that things that were important to them were not necessarily what I was being told by the experts.
Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? Would you agree, Desmond?
Absolutely, hands down.
What was the most surprising thing that you took away from that?
You know, when you have an opportunity to walk and knock on, thousands and thousands of doors, shake hands, look people in their eye, and they hold very candid conversations that dialogue, that meeting the people, is far different than what I was actually engaged with professional and expert opinions as well, whom had not taken the time to really understand where I live. And ultimately, that's what makes the decision.
You also, Desmond, had an interesting challenge. Your original opponent passed away just weeks before the general election in November, which is really an interesting thing if you stop and think about this, how you were pushed out of the general election where there was some momentum in your party relative to the top of the ticket, and that then went to a special election in December, was it?
Yes, yes.
And so how did, I mean, every business person's nightmare is being thrown off their game. You had a certain game plan up until a certain amount of time. How did you deal with that?
You know, that's it was a very challenging issue, and I feel most badly for my opponent's family and the challenges that they've had to encounter. And I'm sorry that we did lose a wonderful citizen, first and foremost. It was a challenge. It did throw a monkey wrench. We backed off of the campaign. I actually had requested that we stop the campaign in observance of what had taken place. And then we had to restart. The second campaign was completely different than the first campaign. So it's almost as if, from a business perspective, it would be launching an additional product. The second campaign had nothing to do with the first. The second campaign really was focused on dollars raised and my opponent being able to raise close to $133,000 in 25 days. And what they were able to do was to blanket multiple media outlets in order to get name recognition. So hence, it became more of a visibility game as opposed to the insight and questions and answers and understanding insights of your constituents.
We just had a comment on Twitter. I'm watching Michael Libby of Inside Advertising on Webcast One Live. I think he's so handsome.
Georgie, hi.
My bride. Always just right there, you know. Susan, you know, this knocking on the door, this is really, you're being told by those people who are pulling the puppet strings at state government or wherever it happens to be at the political level, what's important to Iowans or what's important to your customers. What are you finding out when you're doing the door-to-door knocking and speaking with people one-to-one? Are there some differences?
I was cautioned to be very careful about answering questions directly on some of the social issues, for example. And I learned not to fear that, that I could be myself and that most people just wanted a chance to talk about their feelings on many of those issues. And it turned out that my personal beliefs tended to match up pretty well with people throughout the district, no matter their party affiliation. And so that was one thing. But I would say that those who advise over and over, you hear the phrase dollars and doors.
Really?
You need to be fundraising, you need to be knocking doors. That was absolutely right. That doesn't change from one campaign to another. So while the issues and the way you address them might, the need for money and the need for that personal contact does not.
We're visiting about the backstory of running a political campaign and those interesting parallels that running a political campaign as a candidate has to do with absolutely with the small business. You're the CEO. We're talking with Susan Judkins and Desmond Adams. Both ran for Susan ran for the Iowa House, District 43. Desmond for the Iowa State Senate in District 22. Susan, you lost by 22 votes.
Right.
Huh. You know, any business person out there would look and say, "Wow, we did pretty good." When you reflect as a business, and you look back on that experience from an employee, from a budgetary standpoint, from a messaging, from an advertising, where do you think you could have picked up 22 votes?
I think there probably were some opportunities for that. And I don't fault any one person. I don't fault myself, because I think that everything possible was tried. But number one, we were depending on a mail campaign because there weren't resources to be on television. And I think that mail campaign should have been earlier. So there was the potential that we were missing some of the early voters who may not have paid attention to my name. Had there been resources, we certainly should have been on TV and other media. I certainly would have done that. And another time, I might try to pay even more attention to social media.
Yeah, that is a huge tool. And one of the things, Desmond, that you were able to utilize extensively. When we talk about messaging, you know, as a business person, you're a small business owner, how is messaging in politics similar or different than messaging in business?
Well, you have to clearly understand what you're selling. You have to clearly understand what you're trying to get across. In business, you're selling a product or a service, and that you have to clearly have that defined for whoever the end user is. In politics, you are trying to position your ideology, your thought process, and you need to do it in a very succinct manner. People don't take time to really delve into background information and understanding the intricacies of the concepts. Unfortunately, it's a very short time span in which you have to deliver that message.
But you ran for almost 2 years.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. 2
years. Talk about that from a business standpoint. You're a small business owner. You're also running for political office. That must have been a challenge in time management for you.
Very much so. Herculean challenge. Absolutely.
Talk about that a little bit. What about time management? Just as a business owner, you know, a business owner has to be able to devote time to all of those issues, from employees to messaging to advertising to budget. You're running two businesses. You're running a campaign and a small business. Talk about those challenges.
Effectively, you have to have an incredible staff and incredible support systems in order to make that work.
Just like in business.
Just like in business. From a political standpoint, I had an incredible team that worked with me that was just as dogged and committed as I was at the time. And it was incredible to be able to work with such fine professionals, yourself being one that's included in that. From a business standpoint, time management really did, my time management was impacted because the campaign started to encroach into areas during the day, which is when I was spending the bulk of my time working the business. So I could not spend as much time. I had to make a call, and this is something my wife and I talked about at great length prior to running. If we're going to be committed, and I say we, if we are going to be committed to the success public service for Iowa, then we understood that there was going to be some level of impact to the business. And there has been a level of impact to the business, quite frankly, and I'm very open and honest about that. But yet, I had an opportunity to open up the dialogue, come up with some ideas, create some thought processes, and bridge some concepts as well for the community. And I think that I did a fairly decent job of that, and I'm very proud of that, and I'm very proud of the public service in which I gave back.
Susan, when we were talking with Susan Judkins and also Desmond Adams, both unsuccessful candidates in the 2012 election cycle, what's the thing that you take away from this experience that's the most impactful for you?
Well, not long after the election was finished and we had gone through the recount and realized that the 22 vote loss would stand, I was asked to put together a list of the positive elements of running for office, even when you lose. And that definitely put things in perspective for me. I took away significant insights into politics in general, the business of running a campaign, whether it's a House race or beyond, the whole management element. I really honed skills there, as well as with message delivery. And so I would highly recommend that a person who's really committed to running for the right reasons not be afraid to do so, and to realize that there will be positive impacts no matter the outcome.
We're talking with Susan Judkins and Desmond Adams. When we come back, we're going to finish our interview with these two good friends of mine. Complete transparency, I love them both. Great people, extremely talented individuals, smart folks who ran a little short in the election process. Susan by 22 votes, and Desmond, how many votes?
1254.
1250. That's indelibly ingrained, isn't it?
Out of 10,000.
Out of 10,000 votes. That's got to be humbling.
It is.
That's a lot of people.
That is a lot of people. That's the second one, too. The first one was close to 20,000.
Yeah, 20,000 people voted for it. It's pretty amazing when you stop and think about it. When we continue our conversation, we're going to talk a little bit more about the business aspect of running a campaign. Also, we've got the worst ads, not one, but two, the worst ads of the week. That and more when we return. This is Insight on Business, powered by Webcast One Live.